Hello YouTube, we're back on Real Talk. Second live today. I wasn't going to do a second one today, but I felt the need, I felt the urge as I'm out walking the dog. Here's my little Bubs. I've listened to the radio today. I've seen on social media and in newspapers, and it's bugging me. I had to go live because of this. I took the bait on it. It had to happen. Greggs the Bakers. They've done it again. They've managed to create a tasty treat, so I'm led to believe. A vegan steak bake. And for some reason, this has managed to get all over social media. It's been spoke about on LBC today, on the radio. It's become a thing. Why? Why has this even graced the news? I don't get it. Okay, all Greggs had to do was launch it, just start selling it. That's all they had to do. Word of mouth would have prevailed, but no, it had to become a thing because it's vegan. So, I'm going to talk about veganism. I'm going to talk about the benefits I see from doing it. If that's what you are, if that's who you are, if you are a vegan or vegetarian, or if you're an omnivore like me, or if you're a pure carnivore, let me know. But I want to talk about veganism specifically and why it always has to be a thing in the news whenever there's a new vegan product. Did you know, this is funny, did you know that KFC, a fast food outlet, I'm not going to say restaurant, a fast food outlet, is now on the verge of selling a vegan burger? This is a shop primarily aimed at selling the cooked carcass of chicken, specifically chicken, not KFV, not KFF for fruit. No, it's Kentucky Fried Chicken, and yet they're about to sell a vegan burger, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to have their own equal fair share of where they wish to go to eat, and I'm all for that. But why does it have to make the news? Why? I think it's because of this Me Too mentality that everyone seems to have. But because someone chooses to eat nothing but vegetables and fruit for their entire life, which again, there's no problem with that, it has to make the news. I mean, could you imagine, okay, if there was a store out there somewhere that only sold vegetables and fruit, and someone that piped up who only ate meat, and believe me, I know a few people out there that will only eat meat. They do not touch any kind of fruit or vegetable whatsoever, and that includes tomato sauce. Could you imagine if that person went into this establishment and said, yeah, it's not really fair, I think you should sell meat because I feel oppressed. You should be selling meat. That's not going to wash, is it? Not really, you see. And don't get me wrong, like I said, if you want to be vegetarian, great. If you want to be vegan, even pescatarian, and only eat fish, I've got no issue with that. The only issue I have with it is the way it's always thrust in people's faces. You see, as a straight man, I don't ever assert my heterosexuality on people. I don't. Nor do I care whether people are gay, lesbian, bi, pansexual. I genuinely don't care. But I don't go thrusting it about and say, well, everyone else seems to get all these different rights, but what about me for being a straight man? No! It doesn't work like that, does it? Because everyone else who has any kind of difference has to flash it about and use it as a weapon, which is exactly what is happening with veganism at the moment is it's being waved around like an almighty weapon because they're so much better than we are. Oh, that's it, I've done it now. I've caused some controversy again. It just gets on my nerves. It shouldn't have to be this way. You know, just sell a product and don't rub it in people's faces. I don't want to keep constantly hearing, oh yeah, I've been a vegan for 6 months and it's like the best thing I've ever done, but the smell of bacon sometimes gets me going. I genuinely don't care what your dietary needs are. Unless you come to my house for dinner and you have to say to me, yeah, Chris, I've been a vegan for the last 6 months. I know we haven't really spoke very much, but I don't eat meat at all or consume any product from an animal. Not a problem. I will make you something tasty, delicious and healthy and vegan. That's not a problem because that is your dietary requirement. But it's not your social requirement to tell everyone else about it. It's really not, you see. But I mean, the benefits of it, don't get me wrong. You know, I would imagine you lose weight in a healthy way if you're a vegan. I know that I believe the world's current strongest man is a vegan. Great, that's fantastic. I know that you can get just as much protein out of fruit, veg and pulses as you can out of meat, but you do lose out on some vitamins, which there are supplements for. And I get that, and I respect it, and I understand it. You know, go you. Be the best you can be. This could even go back to my previous video I done this morning. If you want to go vegan, go vegan. I believe they've called January Veganuary. That's excellent, do you. But please, don't thrust it upon me. Please, don't thrust it upon me. It gets on my nerves hearing constantly about people being vegan. You're a person with a dietary requirement and we don't all need to know it. But it's healthy. I can't deny the fact that it is healthy. Equally, having a pure meat diet, and believe me, there are people out there that only eat meat. In fact, there's a gentleman in America who actually only eats meat and he eats it raw. He has an animal, he slaughters it himself in a humane way, and he consumes the entire animal over the course of 3 months. Blood, everything. And yet he's extremely healthy. And some would argue that, what about that animal's right to live? And I'm all for that, I respect that as well. But that is that man's, excuse me, it's windy, excuse me, and I just dropped the dog lead. There we go. But I mean, I have to respect that man's dietary requirement. That might just be the way he has to live, you see. And if the sound quality is really bad, you know, this is as real as it gets. It's windy up here at Crystal Palace, and but this is the way you got to look at it, all right? And no one ever talks about it this way, okay? Let's just say, for argument's sake, on a hypothetical, if everyone became a vegan over the next, say, 5 years, you know, 90% of people became vegan, what would happen to the farming industry? What would happen? People would lose jobs, people would lose houses, you know, it would cripple a large part of the economy. But on the plus side, as the livestock industry contributes to the majority of CO2 that goes into our atmosphere, it would benefit the planet, it would benefit our quality of air we breathe, and it would help to contribute to the decline in global warming and climate change. I get that. But what happens to those animals? If everyone went vegan, next week, and it was a legal requirement that everyone in the entire world had to switch to veganism, what would happen to all of those innocent animals? Would they be slaughtered? Would they? Well, what else can happen to them? Would they be allowed to roam free? Would they be allowed to go back into the wild? Because the way you've got to look at it, and it's a sad reality, is that those animals have done nothing wrong. They have been bred for a specific purpose, and they would more than likely be put out of their misery by the very people that are campaigning to save their lives. They would probably be slaughtered. All right, now let's turn this on its head. What would happen if the whole world went vegan next week by legal decree? You know, if every government in the world said, right, we're going to cut CO2 emissions, we're going to make everyone healthier, everyone has to go vegan. But we're not going to slaughter all these animals, we're going to let them live in the wild. Wild cows, wild pigs, wild sheep, wild chickens, everything can live on the land. What then happens then? I'll tell you what happens then. Farmland and green pastures and the countryside would actually get destroyed. Unregulated. It would get destroyed, is what would happen. And because these animals would then be allowed to live and breed as they so choose, there would be herds, and I mean herds, of hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, of wild animals roaming the planet, trying to graze and live their life. Also, we can eat vegetables, and you know, I respect their right to live just as much as I respect the next person's right to live. But the way you've got to look at it is, if they're breeding and no one's keeping tab on this and it isn't regulated, then obviously it destroys the countryside, does it not? But what about all of that CO2? Not CO2, excuse my language, methane. What about all of that methane, which then goes into our atmosphere because of the sheer amount of wild animals that would normally be kept under a certain condition? I'm not saying it would be the best condition, but would be regulated, you see. What then happens to the amount of methane that these animals would produce? Straight into the atmosphere. And I think most people know that the main culprit, or one of the main culprits for climate change and global warming, is methane. Is it not? You know, and then let's just say that this did happen and everyone became vegan, and over the next 20 years eating meat was a thing of the past. How we've all evolved, you know, we've taken the next step forward in our evolutionary history. We all are vegan and we live in peace and harmony with our animal friends. But yet global warming and climate change hasn't gone anywhere. So by now, it's 20 years in the future, everyone's a vegan, we all drive electric cars. Coal factories are only, coal power plants are only a thing that exists in China, because, you know, China doesn't want to do anything to help the situation, you see, and everyone is living off clean energy, which is solar, hydro, or hopefully in 20 years fusion. Everyone's clean, but there's still climate change, and then there's a massive outcry for someone to go in and cull all of these animals that are now roaming free because we didn't want to eat them and we were forced not to eat them. Thank you, vegans, thank you very much. You see, so what happens then? I'm just throwing this out there as a what if, because no one ever talks about it from that side of the argument. No one ever flips it on its head and goes, what about this? All you ever hear is, oh yeah, we need to cut our CO2, and yeah, we all need to go vegan or cut the meat out of our diet somehow. And again, they're all noble things to say, but you have to think about this in a realistic manner, okay? Now, if I'm told I need to buy an electric car, which, don't get me wrong, I would love to have an electric car because it's good for the environment, isn't it? But when you think about it really, the lithium that these batteries need, the ion lithium batteries that these cars need, which is mined from lithium mines, is destroying parts of the world. And people don't even think about that. You know, these batteries have lithium, and lithium is mined. I believe a majority of it's actually mined in Australia, funnily enough. But no one ever thinks about that. And these electric cars with these amazing electric batteries, you know, which, to be fair, electric cars have been around since the 40s or 50s, but no one ever thinks about that, do they? But no, but these cars, they have the battery life of optimum battery life of 5 years, and these batteries cannot be recycled, you see. So okay, fine, so I've got this electric car. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that in 5 years time I changed my car from a relatively economical Nissan Qashqai 1.3 with 160 brake horsepower, you know, to an electric vehicle, because Tesla, this is only hypotheticals, Tesla decided to come out and say, yeah, we're reducing the cost of our cars to around about £12,000, you know, $13,000. You know, they're now the affordable family car, and Tesla's going to provide that. But again, it's only a hypothetical, okay? And I buy that electric car, okay? And then that electric car gets me 320 miles out of a single charge. That's great. That's an amazing achievement out of an electric car. Fantastic. And then when I want to charge that vehicle, where's that vehicle drawing its power from? I'll tell you where it's drawing its power from now. A power plant somewhere in the UK. And hopefully, and we don't know exactly where our power is coming from, hopefully that is going to be some kind of green energy. Because by not burning petrol or diesel or using electricity, you're literally passing the buck, the carbon emissions, those toxic fumes, you're passing them on to somewhere else. So if we all plug our cars in of an evening, and we all plug in our telephones, and the TV stays plugged in, and our router stays plugged in, and everything that we have at home is plugged in and connected, always drawing power from the grid, and then our cars get plugged in at the same time, could you imagine the strain it would put on the electricity grid? But no one seems to think about that, do they? And where's that power coming from? Again, no one thinks about that either. It's the same argument with people that want to go vegan. It's a noble gesture, but the bigger picture, the reality of it is people will lose their jobs, and the economy, one way or another, and the countryside will take a massive, massive hit for it. Don't you agree? If you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine, but please state your argument, you see? Please do. I mean, we've got to think realistically. Instead of looking at the world with rose-tinted glasses, you've got to look at everything as it is. Instead of saying, oh yeah, well, we need to do this. It's great, we do need to do that, but what about the consequences? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's a fact. So if I have an electric car, which is good, that car's going to be drawing power from somewhere, which is bad. And put it this way, when you're called up by whatever power provider or energy provider that you have, in the UK here we've got Southern Gas Networks, we've got British Gas, and they both do electricity. You've got, those are one of the big two, you know. But there's loads of energy providers out there, and they all say, if you get your energy from us, your gas and electric, we'll make sure that electricity comes from a clean, green place. How? How can you guarantee that the electricity you use to play your PlayStation is coming from a green source? Because the last I checked, all of the electricity comes down the same damn line. I think Lee Evans, the comedian, hit this on the head once. I believe it was Lee Evans. Does the electricity get to me any faster? No, it doesn't get to me any faster. It's the same electricity coming down the same lines, and you don't know where that electricity is coming from. Not in the grand scale of things, do you? No. So, wow, that's windy. I don't know. I'd like to think that I had, let's get back on topic now. I'd like to think I had a well-balanced, varied diet. I would. I eat plenty of fresh fruit and veg. Yes, I consume the flesh of dead animals. I consume the flesh of fish. I like sweets. You see, I like I like sweets with animal products in them, because majority of the time you just don't know. See, vegans have a very difficult life, and I have to take my hat off to them if I had a hand free, because they have such a hard time trying to filter out what they can and can't have. You see, a vegan can't wear leather shoes or have a leather belt. A vegan can't have a majority of the tasty sweets that I like to have, Haribo, because there's traces of pork in them. In fact, you can actually get halal Haribo with no pork substances in there at all. There's certain shampoos and soaps that vegans can't have because of a chemical called lanolin, which again is derived from pork. So it's a very, very difficult thing to try and be. You see someone with a really nice jacket and you're a vegan. Oh, I like your coat. What's it made from? It's made from suede. Yeah, I don't like that jacket anymore. You see? So it's a very difficult thing, you know, and you have to respect someone who is that patient and cares about animals that much. The fact that they won't wear or consume any animal products, or, you know, you got to respect it. You have, you know, because it's a lot of time, effort and patience that goes into that, you see. And the fact that they love their own body that much, that they're willing to go through that much hardship to make sure their body is kept in a healthy state without consuming animal products. You see, I mean, there's animal rights. It comes down to animal rights as well. I mean, animals have a right to live. Again, I get that. I fully understand that animals have a right to live just as much as humans do on this planet we call Earth. Okay, I get that. But when I'm driving down Regent Street in central London, and I drive past a clothing store, a very popular clothing store known as Canada Goose. Many people know Canada Goose. You may even own a jacket or a coat of some sort from Canada Goose. They're in fact, I wish I had a jacket from Canada Goose, because they're lovely, but they're really expensive. But you get protesters out there on a daily basis campaigning because animals died for the fur on those coats. And yes, it's a nasty thing when you think about it. An animal was raised and bred and raised in captivity, and then it was killed, and then it was skinned, and then it was turned into an item of clothing. I get how horrific that is, okay? But you're campaigning outside of a clothes shop. If you really, really, really wanted to campaign about animal rights, don't campaign outside of a Canada Goose shop. What you should do is make your way down Regent Street towards Piccadilly Circus, then take your second right onto Haymarket and see the amount of restaurants down there that serve beef all day and all night. And then you tell me about where you really want to start your crusade on animal rights. Outside a clothes shop or outside restaurants that literally endorse everything you hate about animal rights right now. Think about that. You're protesting outside of a clothes shop, when half a mile down the road you have an absolute myriad of places that literally make a profit out of the death of animals, and then people go in there and consume them. Vegans, animal rights protesters. And don't get me wrong, there is a difference between a vegan and an animal rights protester, because obviously not all animal rights protesters are vegan, although I'd like to think that a majority of them are, and that's just me boiling it down to common sense. So what do? This whole conversation for the last 25 minutes started because I was having a rant because of Greggs the Bakers. Greggs the Bakers, who decided to launch a vegan steak bake. What about me? I eat vegetables. I'm a vegan. I want a steak bake that isn't got any steak in it. What do? You don't have to broadcast it all over social media. You don't have to put it in newspapers or make it a thing on the radio. I didn't really have to make this a thing on YouTube so that hopefully millions of people will see it, but judging by my viewing figures in the next month, about 237 people will see this video, and that's probably not that far from the truth. But I shouldn't have had to make this video today. I didn't want to go live for a second time today, but I was compelled to. I felt like I didn't want to, but I had to raise this issue with people. And I don't mind there being vegan food in places. In fact, I actually encourage it, because I am, believe it or not, all for equality everywhere. Everyone should be included, you know, regardless of who they are, where they're from, what they look like and their dietary needs. If somewhere makes food, then produce a good vegan option. The only thing I can see bad about this, and I really hope I'm wrong about this, is the cross-contamination factor. Now, I would hope that the people that work in Greggs have been sufficiently trained to cook these vegan steak bakes, or bake these vegan steak bakes, on the top part of the shelf of the oven, so that nothing drips down onto them, or even in a separate oven altogether, on clean baking parchment that hasn't already been used, and that whenever the staff get these things out of that lovely glass cabinet at the front of the till, they use a fresh pair of gloves and a fresh pair of tongs, or a dedicated vegan pair of tongs, again, so as to not cross-contaminate. And you'll see this as a bad practice in most Subways. Honestly, you go to Subway and you stand behind someone who asks for a vegetarian sub, right after someone before them asks for a turkey and ham super deluxe blah blah blah. I guarantee they touch the meat first, then they put all the vegetable on, and they can wear all the different pairs of gloves they want. But you know that after they've done the meat first and then touched the vegetables, that there is then cross-contamination on the vegetables underneath where their fingers were, which then makes the whole thing pointless. And I see that all the time, and it drives me mad. It really, really does. It shouldn't do, but it does. The other thing that concerns me about this scenario with Greggs the Bakers, is that it's £1.55 for a bake, for a fake bake, a fake steak bake, a vegan steak bake. £1.55 is relatively expensive. It is. That is quite expensive for processed baked vegetables. I would have assumed that, being there no meat product in it, and it's all made from things that the earth doth giveth us, that it would be slightly cheaper. You would assume that it would be cheaper, but it's not. It's not. Which is really odd. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree? That is so strange that steak bake, that vegan steak bake, costs the same as a regular bake. Wouldn't you agree? But maybe that's just me being flippant with it, you know. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. All I can say for now, after ranting for half an hour, is that I'm actually sick. And I am. I'm bored of listening to people bang on and seeing on social media every day, you know, and listening on the radio to people who bang on about being vegan. I genuinely don't care anymore. You don't have to rub it in our faces. We don't care. The same as I don't care, and I would never know if you were Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Hindu or any other religion. I wouldn't know that, because that's your private life. I don't want your dietary requirements thrusted upon me on a daily basis. I don't need it. Okay? Anyway, I've had a rant long enough. I'm gonna go and listen to the radio, see what else I can rant about tomorrow. I might tomorrow, let me just get across this road without dying. Here we go. I am taking my son tomorrow, my boy Jack, to see the new Star Wars film, because I haven't seen it yet. So I might give my honest, real talk opinion on the new Star Wars film, as it is the complete end, so they say, to the Star Wars saga. I wasn't impressed that much with the last two, and I'm a Star Wars fan. So I may well do a live tomorrow, and it will contain spoilers if I do decide to give an honest review on the new Star Wars flick. So there's that. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Again, if you like this video and you think I've got a couple of good points, hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. Hopefully you're entertained by it. If I've earned it, then thank you very much for your time. Happy New Year yet again to everyone, and have an absolutely blinding evening. Take care.